In this episode of the Orange Nerd Show, we are talking all about Bob Iger's Iger 2.0, basically. His 1 year anniversary this month from coming back and replacing Bob Chapek last year. A fascinating turn of events back then. We were all kind of shocked by that, but we're going to break down and we're going to basically give him a report card, a progress report as to how good or bad he's done in the last year. Up next on the Orange Nerd Show. Aboard, everybody, to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show, where we focus mostly on the Orange Nerd Show, on like nerd culture, Star Wars, Marvel, all that stuff, and also the corporate side, things like that. We kind of stay away from the theme parks, but that doesn't mean that theme parks will be completely void from this topic. It might come up during the discussion, but yeah, let's dive right in. George, I'll start with you, Mr. Citrus George. If you could let everybody know where they could find you on social media.
Absolutely. You could find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also now find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on at my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Perfect. Let me chime you in. There we go. All right, Mr. Matthew Murr is back. Matthew, it is so good to have you back on the show, brother, all the way from the UK.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, sir. And I will be linking Matthew's Instagram and his Twitter X account in the description below. There's a lot of numbers and stuff, so it's just easier if I link it. So definitely give him a subscribe. He's a really passionate Disney fan. He talks a lot about like the corporate side of Disney and things like that. So if you're into this stuff, and if you're watching this video, you probably are, make sure you give Matthew a subscribe and a follow over there on Instagram and on Twitter. All right, so George, I'm actually going to start with you. We're going to give Bob Iger 2.0, kind of like a progress report, a report card for the last year. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, look, it's been a year, and it's a significant amount of time now. He's had some time to kind of make moves here. Mm-hmm. We'll start with the negatives. Mm-hmm. What are some negatives that you've seen Bob Iger do in the last year that you were like, that's not a good move, or he could have done better?
Okay, so I'm actually going to start at the very beginning when he came back as Iger 2.0. That actually is a negative for me. The fact of how he left the company to Chapek without no clearance whatsoever, without any notion of how the company could react to it, and it's just like, yep, I'm leaving the company, I'm giving it to Chapek, I'm out, I'm gone.
Out.
So then the fact of coming back, I'll give it to him, to the fact of coming back, and of course, progress to be made, that you're not going to just do something with a click of a finger, or in Disney's case, a wave of the magic wand. It's just not going to happen with anybody. So I'll give that to Iger's credit. But what I do down him for is, yes, he is fixing a mess right now, but a big hard X on it is it's a mess that he created.
No, that's fair, George. That's absolutely fair. And we really railed into Iger during the Chapek years, because that's absolutely the case. He kind of he saw the pandemic kind of on the horizon, and he sort of just threw the keys to Bob Chapek, and it was like, okay, it's yours now. And it was not a good move for the Walt Disney Company. I think Bob Iger was sort of looking to protect his own legacy, which is fine. He has a right to manage and take care of his legacy, but
not at everyone else's expense.
Exactly, Matthew. That's exactly what I was going to get at. But not at everyone else's expense, and not at the Walt Disney Company's expense. Matthew, what's a negative thing that you think in the last year Bob Iger has done?
I'm just going to get this out of the way because this is a bit of a burning one. He's done absolutely nothing with Kathleen Kennedy. You would honestly think that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny would be the final straw for Kennedy, but apparently not. What do you think is happening, though?
Matthew, that you bring up a fantastic point with this, okay? And I've been really frustrated with this, and I've been frustrated with this for a long time. Look, I'm not one of those people that are like, I haven't hated Kennedy for years and years and years. My frustration for her has slowly built up over the years. And now I'm to a point where she needs to go. It's enough already. We've had so much behind the scenes drama. She can't, for whatever reason, she can't hire a director and follow through with a director. It's like we've gone through more directors than movies. It's really frustrating.
I'm just going to just say this, and I don't really mean to be rude. Kathleen Kennedy is like the boil on anybody's butt. It's like it's there, it's just sitting there, and it's like hard to get rid of.
No,
and
it is.
And it's like, I hate to use that kind of terminology, but it's just like there's no progression of her as president of Lucasfilm. There's just nothing is coming out. Just like with Damara with Parks.
Right,
it's that same scenario.
Well, and that's one of my negatives was that I feel that there's in a lot of areas, Bob Iger in the last year hasn't been bold enough in his decision-making stuff, right? So that's what Matthew that's a great point. I mean, that's one of the areas where I don't think he's been bold enough. I think you would do a lot to kind of build confidence with the investment community, build confidence with fandom. If you were to replace Kathleen Kennedy with, say, a Jon Favreau or a Kevin Feige or what have you. And I know Marvel's going through some stuff right now, but I do think Feige is better equipped to kind of navigate those waters long term. I think that would go a long way. And for whatever reason, despite all the drama and all the money wasted with her running this studio, with all the director drama and all the projects being canceled and this, that, and the other, Bob Iger never got rid of her, and even Chapek never got rid of her. And I don't know why. I don't know what is it that you're holding on to her. I don't know.
It's almost like a lot of these people in these corporate companies, they are hired for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to be the face, the image of what they are in control over. And you had said it yourself, OG, Iger is the type of person for his legacy. You know, he wants to be known as the golden child, the one that can do no wrong. And it's like when you see his face, he's the one that conquered and brought the Walt Disney Company back up from the ashes like a phoenix or what have you.
Right.
And it's like that's his MO. So it's almost like that because he has that type of mentality, he wants a group of people to be his posse, so to speak, that kind of has that recognition, that face to say, you know what? Yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but don't I look good? Sort of thing.
Right.
And it's like they have to kind of get out of that way. And it's like, despite or whether or not a person is very sociable, or despite if a person is, in the parks or what have you, as long as you know what the hell you're doing, that's all I care about.
Right. No, me too. Exactly. It's like relationships or dating, right? You could be the best looking guy on the planet. You could be David Beckham. Okay. But if your personality sucks, you're still gonna flop with women. You know what I'm saying? The looks only get you so far. It's the same thing with this. It's like, yeah, Daddy Josh and Bob Iger.
And trust me, OG, for us men, women and flopping are two things that you do not want it to go together. It's just not a good combination.
No, exactly. And it's like, I think that these guys, yeah, they're charismatic. Yeah, they're good looking. Yeah, they have great stage presence and they know how to carry themselves. But if you're not providing substance, if you're not providing quality stuff to the company, what good are you? You know. Now I do like Iger more than I like Daddy Josh. I do think Iger has provided a lot more substance to the Walt Disney Company than Daddy Josh. But still, I mean, this last year has been, not the greatest for Bob Iger,
But then that's also to the notion of, yes, I agree. Damaro runs parks, resorts, and experiences.
Right.
But at the same time, Iger is still ahead of him. It's like when you have children. Yes, as children get older, they make their own mistakes and what have you, but it's up to the parent to guide them and show them which path is best to take, and then they kind of utilize those tools and then move forward in life. I feel like that even though Damaro hasn't done anything on his own as chairman of the parks, I still think at the end of the day it's still up to Iger to light a fire under his butt and say, you know what, you need to do something, otherwise I have to look at other options.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right on that, George. It's like, you're right. Daddy Josh can do what he's going to do, but Iger is the guy in charge. He's his boss. So if
and
Josh
he's Kennedy's boss.
And Kennedy's boss, exactly. So if you could be the boss, but like when these executives are not performing, you gotta show some accountability. I heard a lot of talk earlier this year when Bob Iger came back. He's gonna really lean into accountability. I haven't seen it yet. I mean, well, he got rid of Victoria Alonso. Who else? That's it. I mean, Kennedy should have been gone a long time ago. I'm sorry. And look, I'm not one of these people that like, don't embarrass her or anything. Let her quit, and say she's gonna go spend time with her family or whatever. You don't want to embarrass her, fine. But she needs to go. We need fresh blood in there, whether it's Feige that runs Star Wars, whether it be
or Favreau.
Or Favreau, exactly. But we need.
It will eventually happen, in my opinion, but it's taking too long. That's the problem.
That really is the problem. It's not the fact that they don't know which path to take. It's the long progression of waiting and letting things drag out. They need to just rip that Band-Aid off and take care of business. You're absolutely right, Matthew, on that.
Matthew's right, and that's a huge problem because, I mean, with this kind of stuff, the longer you drag it out, the more brand damage you do. And that's one of the problems. And Josh from Den of Nerds, I'm a huge fan of his, by the way. Check him out on YouTube. But he made a great point the other day on Twitter when he said, like Feige, with these Marvel projects, he needs to stop delaying stuff and start canceling stuff because they have a lot of stuff in the pipeline that you can just see a mile away are going to flop. Well, it's great. You want to release this stuff and make some money. But at the end of the day, is it worth the brand damage long-term for the short-term money you might get? It might be better for them to just start canceling stuff and really revamp this and start fresh, So you don't want to drag this shit out. And with Kennedy, you're dragging it out. It's too long.
Yeah, and it's like, even like with the companies, it seems like Marvel's issue is, again, of what you just said. It's things are being delayed and not canceled. Star Wars or Lucasfilm, things are getting canceled and not made.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Things are getting canceled and not made. There was that Disney Plus day like 2 or 3 years ago. We did a video on it, George. I think it was with Theme Park Wizard. And a lot of that Star Wars stuff they announced never even came to be, or we haven't heard anything about it. It's been like 2 or 3 years. So she's an issue. Absolutely. Now, Feige has his issues too. Believe me, the Marvels had a horrible opening weekend. Horrible. And there's issues there. But you know what? I think with Feige, I think that he kind of earned like the fan respect with what he did with everything leading up to Endgame. Okay. Yes, we've been a little bit of a downturn right now with Marvel. But I think he deserves at least, a little more patience to kind of right that ship. Kennedy has had chance after chance after chance after chance. She needs to go. It's enough already. It's enough. Another negative thing with Bob Iger for this past year, one of the biggest surprises for me, that he's had actually quite a few PR blunders, which honestly surprised me. Like when Iger came back, I'm like, all right, the king is back, baby, right? The PR king is back. Chapek was like, he couldn't get out of his own damn way half the time with PR. But Iger's the professional, the polished kind of dude. He's going to handle it,
He's not the same Iger as he was before.
Exactly, Matthew. He's not the same Iger. When he said in that shareholder meeting, this is a rookie mistake on Bob's part. When he told everybody at that shareholder meeting several months back, you're going to see the power of the Disney brand when The Little Mermaid opens, and that movie basically flopped. Okay, it did okay. It had some legs, no pun intended, right? And I love Halle Bailey. I really do. I think she's a wonderful young lady.
But just the film as a whole.
It didn't do that great. Okay, it really didn't. So that's the thing. It's like, okay, Bob, you never do that. You never point to something in the future like that. Like that our whole brand is like hinging now on the Little Mermaid's success that weekend. Yeah, it was a bad move. And no matter what his internal tracking was saying for Little Mermaid, he shouldn't have done that. What he should have done is gone backwards. You go, okay, you know what? The Disney brand is strong. Look at what we did with Avatar. Look what we did with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Point to something that already made the money when it was already a success, a proven hit.
That's what I think personally, which I do agree with you, OG. That was a big PR blunder, no, on his behalf. But I think he tried to be a little bit strategic, and it came back and bit him in the ass. I feel like he kind of was a little bit big for his britches and thought that, again, I'm the golden boy, I can do no wrong. So if people listen to me and say, this is going to be the face of the company, I feel like that he knew of how much of a flop, so to speak, this movie was going to be. So he tried everything in his power to get more butts in those seats. So in a way, he kind of put it upon himself to say, "Oh, this is going to be the face of the company. This is going to be us moving forward." So when people hear that from Bob Iger, it's like, "Oh, you know what? He's like putting all his eggs in one basket. You know, Iger can do no wrong. We better go see this movie." Well, guess what? It didn't work, Bob. And guess what? It made you look like a fool.
It made him look really foolish. The PR, there have been a few PR blunders. I know he also stuck his foot in his mouth with the strike, not this last one, but the writer strike, where he said something to the effect, and I'm kind of like generalizing here, but it was something to the effect of like the creatives are being ridiculous in their demands. Okay, Iger, even if you think that, you don't say it.
Your whole company is based off of creatives. The same people that you're saying is being ridiculous. You don't want them to turn their backs on you.
Right.
And that's not even the last thing to say. That's the never thing to say.
You don't say that. You don't say that because you piss them off, and it did piss them off. That was front page news on Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, all the Hollywood trades for weeks. And it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth in the industry. And that's an issue for Iger, because the big selling point for Iger versus Chapek was that Iger was the Hollywood golden boy, like you say, George. Everyone loved Bob Iger. He was everyone's favorite guy. So he comes in and says stuff like that, and it tarnishes his reputation in the industry. And that's not good. That took, honestly, it's the PR stuff and how much Hollywood hated Bob Chapek is what really brought Chapek down. It wasn't because Park fans were mad about, the churro cart now is moved 10 feet or, Genie Plus. It wasn't that stuff that brought Chapek down. It was Hollywood's right. It was the PR. It was Hollywood's reaction to it.
So could the same now happen to Iger?
What do you think, George? Could the same happen to Iger? Now he's messing up a little on this PR stuff. Could the same happen to him?
I think in a way it kind of already, that wheel has already started. I feel like a lot of people aren't really praising him as much as I'm used to seeing them do prior to Chapek taking it over with the Iger 1.0.
Right.
As the Iger 2.0, I don't really see a lot of people. I mean, I still see them condemning the company as the name Disney, as the brand. Like, I don't actually hear them say, Iger's name. But at the same token, I don't really see a lot of praise saying, see, this is why Iger needed to come back. This is why Iger needed to be CEO. I'm not seeing that too much anymore like I used to with the 1.0.
No, I'm not either.
So yeah. I could actually say it seems like it's starting to go down that route, and I feel like that's why Iger is trying to get those reins now, and it's starting to show a little bit with this last quarterly earnings, which I feel like on that positive note that it's starting a little bit of an upscale, or as you put it, OG, like they stopped the bleeding. Now we're just waiting for, it's all stitched up. Now we're just waiting for the wounds to heal, so to speak. I feel like we're on that trajectory, but I feel like if Iger, knock on wood, fails at some point, I could start to see him going down the path as what happened with Chapek. Because I don't think the company can handle any more big-time blunders. If we get a Chapek 2.0, like we did with the 1.0, as far as the situation with the company,
right,
that's not going to be good.
Yeah, here's the thing to answer Massey's question, too. I think that, like, if Iger's contract was more open-ended, like he was planning on staying indefinitely, I can definitely see there being a push to like maybe remove him, like if things get worse, right? But I don't think it's going to happen this time around, just because there is an end date. I think his contract, expires in 2026, I believe. They're already in the process of. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Sorry. I was just going to add, if you could even add more to that. But at the same time, he's had how many end dates that he was supposed to end. So
that's a fair point.
That's where I'm like, they're saying 2026, but if they really can't find somebody to fit those shoes, are they going to say, oh, Iger, why don't you just stay for another 2 more years? Let's just stay. Yeah. I mean, this guy could probably be in his 90s and he'd still be CEO of the company.
That's a valid
sorry,
point.
OG, go ahead.
No, you're good. That's a valid point. He extended it so much. Yeah, I mean, I do. They're actively looking for a new CEO. I would think that they would let that process play out and just kind of do the transition. But you're right, George. He's already, and honestly, in the last year, he's already extended it. The 2026 is longer than it was when he first started, if you remember.
Because it was supposed to be
2 years.
2024. It was supposed to be 2024 because I asked the question, is it going to be early 2024 or late 2024?
Right.
Because of the expo. And I thought, is he really
Right.
going to leave the year of the expo, or is he going to place his mark with the big fandom community? So it went from 2024 now to 2026
In a year. In 1 year.
In 1 year.
Now, I agree with you. I do though. See, and this is where I'm torn. Okay. I agree with you. He's extended so many times, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am though also of the mindset though, like if he really needs 2 more years, then we give him 2 more years, because I don't want, here's the thing. I don't want him to rush into like to meet a deadline necessarily just to meet the deadline, because then we get into the same problem we had with when he handed over Chapek, where it's like he's not ready and he's just gonna, oh, here you go, you know. So if he legitimately needs 2 more years, I'm fine with that. But if it becomes a hat, like if we get now it's 2028 and now it's, you know, if it's continuing and continuing, then it's okay. Come on, dude.
Because I'm wondering if it would have just been a better idea just to have it as open ended. Don't put an end date.
Yeah.
Because it kind of makes them look like not just Iger, but just the company. It's like, okay, do they really not know what they're doing that they have to keep on giving him an end date and then extending the contract and then another end date and extending the contract? Now, what I find is funny is right now his contract ends in 2028. Isn't that when the Olympics
I believe so, in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles. See, I don't know that if they're going to want to have something kind of big ready for Disneyland, is he going to be up and ready to leave? Because again, it's all about his image. And I feel like something as big as the 2028 Olympics and then all those people coming, and if they're going to end up doing something of which I hope and think that they're going to do at the 2024 Expo, I think by 2028, I don't know. I think honestly, Avatar will be ready for prime time at Disneyland.
What do you mean ready? Like not
for
open,
2028?
Like not open though, right? Like just kind of like,
announced. It'll be announced. It'll be announced at 2024, and then 2028 for the Olympics.
For the so it'll open in 2028.
Like 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Matthew, what do you think? Bob Iger, you think there's a chance he'll get fired? Do you think, or do you think he's going to extend again? What do you think?
I think at this point he is actually on his way out. I think if he had extended, if he had any intention of staying until 2028, it would have happened sooner.
Interesting. Fascinating stuff. And now we have a new CFO. Matthew, I mean, George and I have talked about this on a show before with Alia and Seymour. What are your thoughts on this new CFO, Hugh Johnston? We haven't had really a chance to pick your brain yet on that.
I actually think it's a good move, and to me, it definitely shows that Iger may not really be intent on staying after all.
Yeah, this dude, and Seymour, our friend Seymour Duck made a great point where it's like this guy has a great resume basically, and to pull him away from Pepsi, which is, believe it or not, a bigger company than Disney, which I didn't know that until recently. Pepsi's a massive, massive company, and this guy has done very well with them. To pull him away from Pepsi and say, hey, you know what? Come to Disney, which is a smaller company, and help us put this gigantic fire out for us. I don't know. Like, a lot of people talk crap about Bob Iger and his deal making. But I gotta say, I mean, I don't think he's getting enough credit. And this might be, maybe we can start the positive.
Yeah, we'll start the positive. Yeah,
we'll start the positive. Where I think that actually is one of the positives,
because that's one of mine.
Yeah,
that was
getting Hugh Johnston on board. It was an enormous flex and a very positive thing, because not only does he have the resume and the experience, but he also has a history with Nelson Peltz, and he's on the Comcast or the CNBC CFO board. So he's got connections to Comcast. So two of Disney's big problems, which is Comcast Universal and Nelson Peltz, this new guy, this Hugh Johnston, has experience with both of those. This was a 4D chess move. I know a lot of Disney haters maybe not want, they might poo-poo this decision, you got to give the guy credit where it's due. I mean, this was a smart move on Iger's part. And in the past, Iger hasn't been great at picking talent, with like studio heads and stuff like that. But in this particular case, I think he's made a really smart move with the CFO. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I really do.
And honestly, we've talked about it before, OG, and I'm a big supporter of this notion. Is sometimes it's not about the person that's already internally working in the company that knows what the hell they're doing. Sometimes it's the opposite. If you bring somebody else in from another company, again, that knows what they're doing and knows how to run a company and knows how to run a division or a brand or as a team lead, whatever that case may be, if they know what they're doing, it will benefit the company in the long run. It's just like what happened with Eisner and Wells. One came from Paramount, one came from Warner Brothers, was never working in Disney. They never even touched an animated film. Even to Jeffrey Katzenberg. I mean, I know a lot of people, I even have strong feelings about him, but I mean, like at the time, he was newly and he had to do what he had to do for the company at the time. As I said, speaking of Jeffrey Katzenberg, now I'll plead the fifth.
Yeah, exactly. So now, okay, so we're gonna pivot. We're pivoting now to positive. So Matthew, what's a positive thing that you think Iger has done or accomplished in the last year since he came back?
Managed to reduce streaming losses.
That's a fantastic point. The streaming losses. He brought that down. I think it was last year. And correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew. Last year it was like over $1 billion. These losses. It was like 1.5 billion, I believe, or something along those lines. He brought that down in this last quarter to just under 400 million. And that's huge. I mean, that's huge. And a lot of people aren't getting him credit for that, but that's a massive. He was really the cuts have worked. And the ad tier and all that stuff have worked. What's a positive for you, George?
I actually can agree with that with Matthew. I think that was a really smart move of how quickly he got it done with that amount, like that high end of a number to bring it down to where it is now. I think was very impressive with the amount of time that he utilized within the year of coming back. And also, as adding on to that, I feel like Disney should really focus on what's in the vault right now for Disney Plus, because I think it would also cut them costs rather than make new content multiple times a year. Every single year, you're putting out $100 million for this, $250 million for that. If you go into the Disney vault, stuff that's already pre-made, so to speak, and you're just going to update it, you're going to give it that 4K look or what have you, renew it, place it on Disney Plus, let that stretch out some time, and then you could add new content in between here or there, because it feels like we're just getting new content for Disney Plus just for the sake of adding new content. But primarily, Disney Plus was supposed to hold everything in that Disney vault, and there are still a lot of content that has not been released. And again, I know that's a little bit leaning more towards the negative side in a sense, but I just wanted to bring that up there because, as I said, of what Iger did within the last year to bring those costs down by a lot of cuts, which I know people say, oh, they cut this, they cut that, but you know what? Sometimes it's necessary.
No, exactly. Fans, you can't have it both ways. The reason why the Walt Disney Company, or a big reason why the Walt Disney Company is in the position it's in, is because the budgets are too high. Yeah. So when fans say the budgets are too high, we got to cut costs, and then they cut costs, and you complain because they cut costs, it's like, come on. It's like one of those things. You got to be realistic here. You got to be realistic. One of my positives, actually, and this might surprise people, but I actually think that Iger has done a fairly decent job at moderating the company politically. I know a lot of people are going to go, well, OG, you're nuts. I honestly, though, I think the Disney company is a massive, massive thing. It takes a long time to kind of turn that ship around. We've seen a lot of evidence that they are moving towards moderating. When they announced all those layoffs at the studio early on in his first year of 2.0, a lot of those layoffs were in the DEI division, which a lot of people consider woke. The layoffs started there, so he cut from that. You're starting to see even evidence of moderating in the way they promote these movies. Like when you compare the marketing material for Captain Marvel compared to that of the Marvels, Massive difference. Massive difference. I know the strike has also impacted some of the stuff, so that's in the equation. But they were really leaning into this like strong female stuff, and it turned a lot of people like on the right off or whatever. It turned people off. You don't see that same kind of marketing push with the Marvels, for better or worse. Whether you agree with that marketing or not, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a different marketing tactic. The first approach was much more strong female, rah rah rah. This one, the Marvels, has not been that. In fact, they've leaned in to like the Marvel nostalgia of like Tony Stark and what have you. So they're moderating. They're absolutely moderating. I was just at the parks recently, California Adventure, on Buena Vista Street in one of their stores. They're selling military merch. Support the military. I mean, our armed forces. Now, again, this is a much more conservative sort of mindset, and for them to do that shows, okay, we're kind of the pendulum is sort of coming a little bit towards the middle. Now, I've told conservatives this over and over and over again. The Walt Disney Company is still Hollywood, okay? It's not going to be the Daily Wire. You're never going to get it to that point. And it shouldn't, to be honest.
It shouldn't. I was just going to say, I don't want it to.
Yeah, that's the other extreme. So who wants that, right? But they are going to moderate. They are going to cut. They are going to get more towards that middle, and I think that's a good thing. And we're seeing evidence of it. Even Little Mermaid, the marketing promotion for that, it was more about Halle Bailey as a star, and all that went the marketing than it was about like the strong female or the diversity. So I think overall they are changing directions with the whole political stuff. Hey, another thing too. I mean, look, they promised. Well, they said they're not going to do this overtly political messaging, like the tweet they made about trying to repeal the Florida bill and things like that. So that's good. Now people confuse that with, well, OG though, Disney is fighting DeSantis in the courts. Okay, that's not like that's like business, behind the scenes business, and that's fine. They've always done that. We're talking about tweets done by the Walt Disney Company's Twitter account about repealing bills. They're getting rid of that stuff, but they can still fight their battles, their political battles and all that other stuff behind the scenes like they always have. That's fine. That's fair game. Our beloved Comcast Universal does the same shit. Believe me, okay? They're not innocent in this at all. There are political workings in the background that are always going to happen, but the front-facing stuff, like your Twitter account, you should leave it out of it. And they're starting to. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like leaning to what you were saying about like the political stance, I can start to see a transition that's kind of placing it in the middle of that teeter-totter, so to speak. And as I mentioned before, I don't want it to go full left. I don't want it to go full right. I think, but when you just lean more towards one side, you're only dealing with one set of an audience, right. And it's like, and Disney is made for all. No matter what your political background is, your religious beliefs or what have you, Disney should just be made for that good, wholesome entertainment, for the young and the young at heart, point blank, So I feel like that they are starting to show a little bit of a diversified decision making when it comes to both sides of the spectrum, where they're just kind of like keeping it at bay, where it's like you're not leaning over one side or the other.
Yeah, and there's this narrative out there. This is something that like people really need to start like looking into Bob Iger's past a little bit, like as CEO. He's been there for a long time, so there's a lot of history there, right? But admittedly I was a Bernie bro. Okay, I supported Bernie Sanders in a big way. Okay, and when I go all in on something, I go all in on something. You guys know when I talk about Blackpink and things like that. Like when I'm a fan, I'm a fucking fan. What Bernie, I was the same way. I loved Bernie Sanders, so I was really in tune with his campaign back then. Bob Iger and Bernie Sanders did not like each other. They were fighting constantly, and it wasn't because Bob Iger was super woke and super progressive. No. It was because Bob Iger was more conservative. He was much more of a Hillary Clinton kind of Democrat. It wasn't left enough for Bernie Sanders. Okay. So this notion from a lot of people that Bob Iger is like this hippy dippy wokester, he's like a Jill Stein, is not true.
He'll get in bed with whoever it is, so to speak, just for his image for whoever is willing to play ball.
Whoever's willing to play ball, and he thought the woke thing was a trend after 2020, so he rode that train. But that's not who Bob Iger is. But Matthew, what are your thoughts? I know you've been really, really passionate on this whole idea of Disney and moderating and what have you. What are your thoughts? Do you agree or do you disagree? If you disagree, that's fine too. What are your thoughts, brother?
I think I do agree with you. I think they are starting to moderate now, and that's good. The only real question is how much further once Iger has actually left, how much further his successor will actually go.
Yeah, that's a good point, Matthew. We got to find out who that person is and to see where they kind of stand with that, because it's been proven. Look, it's been proven that you go too far to the extreme, it turns some audiences off, right? I think the next person, guy or gal, whoever it is, needs to understand that, and respect that. You gotta come on. Let's keep it in the middle here, because you don't want to have. And plus, it's also bad press. Like you have the perception even of being woke, and then it's like 1,000 YouTube videos with Bob Iger with the red eyes and the whole thing, right? And Mickey Mouse and all that on the thumbnail. It's like, it's bad press for Disney. Whether you agree or disagree with those videos, it's still a million videos in the YouTube algorithm bashing Disney. So why, Disney, do you want to even feed into that at all? You don't want to do that. You want to be as moderate as possible. We'll see. Wish seems like a pretty moderate film. I don't see any overt kind of political messaging in this from the material we've seen so far. It seems like there's some healthy buzz with Wish. We'll see how it does. It kind of looks a little classical Disney to me. I don't feel anything that's super out of the ordinary or any kind of overt, political kind of propaganda or whatever you want to call it. So we'll see. But
and kind of leaning a little bit into the parks division, when they made that announcement for the quarterly earnings about the $60 billion investment over the 10-year span, I feel like Iger is going to want to get that kind of moving in place, because obviously he's probably not going to be there up until the full 10 years is completed. I mean, who knows? I mean, anything's possible at this point. But I feel like he's going to want to get that running, because by the time the 10 years does come to an end and they utilize the 60 billion and we get all these expansions and all these new projects, it's his name that's going to be tied to it from the very beginning when he put it into motion.
Right. Well, he's got to come through with that. He's got to come through with those investments. Now, here's the thing. This is actually kind of this is a positive and a negative in a way, right?
Yes.
When it comes
Let's get the negative out of the way first.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Let's get the negative out of the way first.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of this one kind of rides the middle a little bit. It's kind of weird. I commend Iger for his dedication, or at least his verbal dedication, to the parks with the 60 billion. And hey, we really want to lean into the parks. I think that's great. You want to invest more, great. The negative is I think he's been a little too soft on Daddy Josh. I think he needs to, like you said, George, I think he needs to kind of put the fire under Josh a little bit. Hey, Josh, let's officially greenlight some stuff and start getting these announcements out here. They really have to start doing that. So Iger, positive thing, absolutely. The 60 billion, investing more in the parks, kind of leaning into that. We got Disneyland Forward. All of these are very positive things.
But there's only so much time you could talk the talk. You have to walk the walk.
You got to walk the walk. And, Daddy Josh hasn't been walking the walk. And we've talked about a lot, George, on this channel. We don't hate Daddy Josh. We think he's a nice guy. Like, I would love to have a bear with the guy.
I'd be happy to have a beer with him.
Dude,
pick his brain a little bit.
Absolutely, Josh. If you're down, Citrus, George, and I will love to have a beer with you. Absolutely. We'll go to the Grand. The Grand Cali. What was that place we went to? Was it Whitewater Snacks?
Whitewater Snacks. Yeah,
I believe.
As far as I'm concerned, he's all style and no substance.
It seems like it, Matthew. Honestly, it's looking more and more like that, where it feels like Josh is a lot of style with little substance.
Yeah.
Bob Iger said Disneyland is going to get an Avatar experience. And we all know what an Avatar experience means. It's going to be some sort of theme park thing, like a land, most likely.
Especially with James Cameron, I was just going to say, with him tied to it, he is not going to want a little walk-through museum type experience. He will never.
No. But see, the thing is, though, is that Bob Iger, he announced that. Great, awesome. But then they let the narratives run on Diz Twitter, like, oh, it's just going to be a thing that they're going to throw into the Star Wars launch bay, some temporary bullshit, this, that, and the other. It's like you have to, when you say this stuff, Iger, and you put this out there, you have to act quick and you have to release, even if it's a vague piece of concept art that doesn't really mean much, let the fans know exactly what we're getting. Is it a land? Say it's a land.
Say it's a land. Yeah, don't give us this experience bullshit. Just say what it is. We're getting a land. We're getting a mini land. You're getting a huge e-ticket attraction. Just say what it is. You don't have to go into specifics. Just give us the ground level of what it is.
Well, because then the fan community takes these words and they play semantics games with it. And then now, before you know it, all of Twitter is talking about how this is going to be some temporary avatar thing in the launch bay. And it likely is not going to be that, but it's like, but that's the narrative. So you get that bad press, you got to, and a lot of this is Daddy Josh. You got to get out there and sort of make these announcements and green light things and make things official and post things on the Disney Parks blog and really like let the fans know kind of where we stand with stuff, Extremely frustrating. Extremely frustrating. Another positive thing, though, for Bob Iger is Disneyland Forward. We've made a lot of progress with that in the last year. I think that's a very, very good thing. It's looking more and more like that's going to, get approved. And honestly, we're critical of Daddy Josh, but we have to give him credit for that as well. I'm sure he's very much a part of that whole process as well. So that's very much a positive thing. But Matthew, any other positives, though, that you could think of for Bob Iger in the last year? Anything that comes to mind?
Not that I can think of yet, to be honest.
Okay,
I think
George,
we've covered as much ground as we can.
We've covered a lot. What do you think, George? Any other positives with Bob Iger in the last year that he's done that you're like, you know what, that impressed me?
I think just for the notion where, so another little mini negative is I'm still surprised that Iger did not bring back Magical Express for Walt Disney World. I mean, I don't even know why that was taken off. I get it, you have budget cuts, but that's the one thing that should not have been a budget cut. So the fact that Iger did not even come up with a plan B solution to get some sort of transportation from the airport to Walt Disney World and vice versa. But I will say on the positive side, I have seen a lot of little stuff that may not seem significant into the parks kind of come back in some odd shape or form. And I also feel like, people are going to go online and they're going to nitpick the shit out of saying, oh, well, this is chipped or this is broken or this tile is off or what have you. I still feel like that things are getting done in the instance of, which I'll dive into it more for our Citrus Corner video, but like with Muppet Vision 3D, they got the new seats in. And yes, I know it took forever and a day to get seats into that theater, but the fact is, under Iger's leadership, things are still progressing. Things are still moving. And I feel like I could kind of see, even though it may be small or it may seem insignificant to a normie, but to us Disney diehard fans, we recognize it. And I see a big difference in the smaller things that are coming back to the parks under Iger's name.
Well, even the Adventureland Treehouse, that's tough, though. I don't know exactly the timeline with that. I think Iger, though, was definitely involved because it took about 2 years for him to do it. Yeah, it was probably Iger who was definitely involved when they were going through that green light process for the Adventureland Treehouse. But that's something that I really do commend Disney for. First of all, it turned out amazing. Okay, I was there recently and it looks fantastic in person. But the fact that they went with basically a Swiss Family Robinson theme, I know, inspired by, but it's basically Swiss Family Robinson. The fact that they went with that, I mean, that's shocking to me because they could have gone with any other billion-dollar IP and thrown it in there and try to make it work. They didn't, though. I commend them on that.
It looks really classic Disneyland. Like it has like that vintage kind of look of like an attraction that you would see like during opening day, which in a way it did value for the Swiss Family Robinson, so to kind of go back to those roots. So again,
Disney... those roots, is that a tree joke, George?
Yeah.
You tree jokes
now? But yeah, and that's another thing too. I think also under Iger, where they started implementing more of Walt Disney himself into things.
That's
Wasn't that under Iger?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because last year we had the issue. Remember last year, you and I and
Yes.
Dr. Dre were very much against the fact that they cut the opening day speech out of Disneyland's anniversary. We were all very vocal on that, right?
Yes.
Very vocal. And that was Chapek. That was Bob Chapek. To be fair, under Bob Iger, it seems like they have leaned a little more into Walt. Since then, they added a lot more of those the clips from Walt in the new fireworks show, Enchantment, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not really 100% on the timeline with this stuff, so correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but we're seeing that they seem to be leaning a lot more into Walt now, like they've learned their lesson. Thank you. It's okay to lean into Walt. It's okay, Look, the guy died decades ago. You're going to find things about the man that are probably going to be, in today's terms, problematic, okay? The guy died a long time ago. If a person was born the day that Walt Disney died, that person would be in their 50s now, I believe? Come on. It's a long time ago. Yeah, it's been a long time. So I understand that he's obviously not of the same mindset of a person in 2023. Understand he's a man of a different era, though, There's no need to cancel the guy, though. I mean, honestly, he founded this company, and I think it's appropriate for Disney to pay homage to him. Now, look, I don't know. You can, if you want to, leave out the elements like Song of the South and things like that you feel are problematic of his era, that's fine, whatever. With Disney himself, though, to remove him or try to cancel him or erase him from these parks or from the Disney kind of
if you want to erase him or anything,
it would be a genuine crime.
If you want to do that, then do it on your own personal lifestyle. If you want to do that for yourself, don't watch the movies. Don't go to the parks. Cancel it in your household. Don't cancel it for the world.
Exactly. And I feel like they're kind of leaning more into Walt again, which is great. Epcot's going to get that great new Walt statue. Hong Kong has a beautiful Walt statue. I even said the new Hong Kong.
I love that one. Oh
my God. I would honestly replace the Disneyland partner statue with that if it was up to.
I would too. Honestly, the partner statue, is great. We're probably going to get heat for that, but if someone were to ask me if you had the option to pick a statue, I would take that Hong Kong Disneyland statue in a heartbeat.
Because these statues, the one in California Adventure on Buena Vista Street and this new Hong Kong one, it brings Walt down to the guest level. He's one of the guests,
and more realistic. It makes him look human. Like where the partner statue, he's standing. It's like a shrine.
Yes. And I get it. That statue was put up in the 90s. Okay. So it was a different thing, whatever. It was the first statue of its kind. Totally understand. But now that we've had these kind of ground level statues, that's more Walt Disney to me. Eye level with all the fans. I was at California Adventure recently. I saw a bunch of families taking pictures with Walt and Mickey on Buena Vista Street. It's amazing. Put your arm around them. That's the Walt we know. That's the Walt Disney we know. The partner statue is like he's too much of it. Like you said, it's like he's up on this pedestal, like he's God, Yeah. I don't know. A little too much.
And the way that they have him is fairly well, peasants.
Fairly well. Yeah, exactly. The pose, right? Exactly. Fairly well. Another thing that I want to give Iger credit for is that, look, Chapek was very unpopular. Okay. Everyone hated him. The fans, Hollywood, everybody, right? He could have easily gone in there and just nuked everything Chapek did. But he didn't do that. And I respect that. I respect that control and the open-mindedness to kind of look at the equation and make the decision based on what needs to be done for the company. We saw that with ESPN and the betting. He was against that. He was absolutely against the Walt Disney Company with the betting when Chapek was kind of circling that idea. When Chapek was running the show. Iger comes in, looked at the situation, decided, you know what? I think this can work. We can maybe do this. Another thing too, I think Bob Iger, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was against the integration of Hulu and Disney Plus when Chapek was kind of kicking. So. kicking the tires on that, right? You got to keep it family friendly. Iger again looked at that equation and said, well, okay, well, we can maybe do this. We can make it a new app. There were options. I like the fact that Iger isn't just going in there and just canceling things Chapek did because it was from Bald Man Bad, and he's looking at it going, well, okay, yeah, that was Chapek's thing, but maybe this could work still. Let's look at it. Let's figure it out. I like that. I absolutely like that. Now one thing too, I talk to Alia, our good friend Alia Aloha, all the time about this. I think Iger could have been a little more bold with some of this television stuff. You got to get out there and start. He needs to kind of come out with a plan, right? Like come out and say, what's the battle plan with linear?
Yeah.
We still kind of don't know.
No, it's like up in the air. It's like not because even to this last quarterly earnings, he's not really giving a defined, not like a defined yes or no, but even just a route of which way they're going. Oh, we're leaning more towards this. It's like he's just kind of talking about it, but where it's like it's not very clear as to what their main plan is. And I don't know if that's just the strategic move to not necessarily say what they're doing right now, or if they really don't know and they're just kind of waiting in the wings.
Yeah, no, that could be it. They might not really know. And it's a big decision. ABC is a big part of the Walt Disney Company. So we'll see. So is ESPN. Now, Matthew submitted a question to our last QA via DM. Now, I didn't get to it in the Q&A because I figured why not, if we're going to have Matthew on today, why not just discuss it with Matthew? So his question was basically this last quarterly earnings call, and I'll start with you, George. This last quarterly earnings call, Q4, was pretty decent. Not perfect, but pretty decent. Like Matthew mentioned, they brought the streaming losses down under 400 million, or just about there, from $1 billion plus just a year ago. Some pretty solid stuff in this quarterly earnings report. Theme parks are doing good, all that good stuff. Does that give you optimism for the direction of the Walt Disney Company, or does it not change you at all?
No, actually, believe it or not, after listening to the quarterly earnings and actually watching Iger as a guest on CNBC right before the earnings call, after I went through that whole transition of watching and listening and kind of taking mental notes of how do I react to this, I actually, in a way, did a big sigh of relief in a way. Yeah. Not saying that we're out of the water yet, but I've definitely, I think out of all the quarterly earnings leading up to this last one from the Pandy on, I could actually say I'm starting to see progress, and kind of even taking that back to Walt Disney. Walt Disney was always about progress, and things aren't going to happen with a wave of a magic wand or what have you. But I have hope, I have optimism that of where Iger left us with the quarterly earnings of what he is saying, I have optimism. Now, where I'm kind of on the iffy side is, are those words going to be put into action? When I start to see things get done with action, then I'll even take an even bigger sigh of relief. Yeah. But at the starting point right now of where we're at, I am optimistic in a positive way that things are going to start getting done.
Yeah, I am too. Matthew, to answer your question, the quarter was pretty good. The quarter was pretty good. And you can tell it was pretty good because of the lack of chatter about it on Twitter, right? If it was a very bad quarter, you would see a lot more talk about it on Twitter, believe me.
And Iger was in a much better mood than he was at the last quarterly earnings, because he was like ripping heads off of the shareholder calls. Like he kind of had like this very aggressive attitude, and I get it. He was probably having a bad day. He got put back into this mess again that he created, not knowing how deep of a mosh pit that he created, but then it kind of reflected on his attitude. But I could actually say this quarterly earnings, he was in much better high spirits.
Things are turning around. They really, really are. And, it's not perfect by any means. I'm not saying that, but it seems like it's moving in the right direction. The streaming stuff is a big deal. And not enough people were really making a point of that. To go from $1 billion plus in losses down to like, just under 400 million. That's a massive accomplishment.
Huge
Go ahead, George. I'm
accomplishment.
sorry, brother.
No, you're good. And I just want to say, not even just the Walt Disney Company, any company out there, you are never going to find a company that is perfect from A to Z all the time. You're going to have your ups, you're going to have your downs. It's a roller coaster ride,
Right.
And I kind of use that term from the movie Parenthood. When
Okay.
the grandmother tells her roller coaster story, it's like just like life, up, down, up, down. Some people don't like the roller coaster; they prefer the merry-go-round. But the merry-go-round just spins. It's nothing. The roller coaster, you get more out of it. And in OG's case, he just looks at it and he's like, "Fuck no, I ain't going on that shit."
Yeah, exactly. I'll go on the merry-go-round. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, what do you think, Matthew? You think did that quarterly earnings call give you a little bit of a sigh of relief? I know that you're a very passionate Disney fan, Matthew, and I love you for that.
It certainly did. It looks like they are heading in the right direction again. My only real concern is whether or not Iger really will extend. What do you think the odds are on a scale of 1 to 10 that he will just throw in the towel by 2026?
Oh, George, go ahead. 1 to 10. Now 10 being okay.
10 being like definitely he'll throw the towel in.
Yeah.
And
1 being he'll extend.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna say I don't think he's gonna throw in the towel. I don't think he's gonna want to leave on that note. But again, I have seen worse shit go down where it's like if someone were to ask me, that I'd say, "Oh no," but it has. So I'm gonna say a 2. I could say a 1, but I'm just gonna add just 1 extra because anything could happen in that time. But I don't think that's not good for his image. That's not good for his name. And I think of everything of what he's working towards now, I feel like it would just be all in vain if he was to throw in the towel. So I would say a pretty low 2, if not a 1.5.
I would agree. I don't think he's going to throw in the towel before his contract is up. I think he's going to see it through. I think his legacy means a lot to him. He also doesn't want to be. Go ahead.
But you don't think he's going to extend it beyond that?
Well, that's
Okay,
another story.
That's another story. Yeah, that's another story.
Yeah, we talked about that a little earlier. I mean, that's the problem with Bob Iger. He has a history of doing that. I mean, even in the last year, we've seen him extend it. I don't know. But see, I'm also torn on that though, right? Because it's like as much as I don't want him to extend it, as much as I want to move on from the Bob Iger era, I also don't want him to stick with it if he's not ready.
See, I would answer that question if I knew who was directly in the running to take his place. So I can actually know to say, you know what? Oh, hell no. They better not put this person in there. Bob got to stay. Or it's like, you know what? Or it's like, you know what? Okay, I could kind of see the wheels turning with this person and all. Right. But actually, to kind of go back to Hugh from Pepsi that's coming over. There's a possibility. I mean, if he plays his cards right and he knows what the hell he's doing, could we potentially see a front runner there?
I mean, he's a lot younger than I thought he was. And, he's only in his, I think his 60s from what I understand. So he's younger than Bob Iger. It's possible. I mean, people have been speculating that might be the case, And, I'm open to anything, like I talked to Matthew a lot about this, like the outsider thing, they got to lean into that more. If you have an outsider who understands it, have the outsider do it.
But kind of staying on the subject, but kind of going back a little bit to Kathleen Kennedy, if Iger really was fully on the Kathleen Kennedy train, I feel like Dana Walden would still be a front runner. I feel like
that's true.
I feel like being that he kind of now put her in the back pedal, so to speak, because she was on Team Kennedy, really shows I feel like Iger is kind of leaning more towards getting rid of her. So I wonder if it's more so the fight between him and the board between Kennedy.
That's interesting because you're right. There was a rumor that came out a little while ago now that Dana Walden was all in on Kathleen Kennedy. And that kind of soured me a little bit with Walden. I was very bullish on Dana Walden. I think she's incredible. Yeah, I think she's an incredible executive. She got a great resume. She knows her stuff. She's even doing like I don't know what it is, like ambassador work or something for Joe Biden. I get it. Whatever side of the political aisle you are, if you don't like Biden, that's fine. But she has that experience in the political world. Even
For her
she
resume,
knows her stuff.
It's
right,
on
exactly.
there.
It's a resume thing, you know. She knows her stuff. But when she said that but when that rumor came out that she was all in on the Kennedy thing, like she thinks Kennedy should stay, I'm like, you don't understand. You're tone deaf, you know. Yeah. It turned me off. And you're right. That's a great point, George. Maybe Iger, if he's leaning towards this other person, maybe he's not seeing eye to eye with her on that, you know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And then as far as DeMauro goes, I mean, you could probably
he's off the table.
You could probably put a goldfish in as CEO, and it would probably run it better than if DeMauro can't even run parks, let alone the whole entire 4 squares of the Walt Disney Company. And honestly, I don't think Wall Street would like to see another parks guy running the company, especially after Chapek.
No, and with DeMauro, you'd get a bunch of like, you know, they'd have like the D23 Expo, like the studio segment, and it would be a bunch of like, imagine if we made a Black Panther 3. Imagine the possibilities if we had made this movie. Imagine if we made that movie. Nothing would be greenlit. It would be all this what if nonsense.
I guarantee you, OG, I bet you, the 3rd Triton class Disney cruise ship is going to be called the Disney Imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'll have Daddy Josh's birthday on the freaking front of the ship, you know, or something. Who knows what? But excellent conversation, fellas. Matthew, it's always fun having you on, brother. We're gonna have you on again very soon and talk some more shop with you. But I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And down below, I will link his Instagram and his Twitter. Follow this man on Insta and Twitter. He is a really, really passionate Disney fan. He's family here on OG55. We love Matthew Moore. Matthew, I want to thank you. I know the time differences are kind of weird. What time is it right now in the UK? Just out of curiosity.
11:35 p.m.
So thank you for staying up late with us, sir. And, you know, it means a lot to us. Thank you so much for coming on. Citrus George, the Italiano. If you could let everybody know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me now on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There we go. So comment down below with everything, all your thoughts on everything we talked about, right? Like the good, the bad, the ugly, about the 1 year anniversary of Iger coming back to Disney as CEO. What are your thoughts? Do you disagree with us? Do you agree with us? We'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the Kathleen Kennedy situation? All that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching OG55, this episode of the Orange Nerd Show. Bye-bye, everybody.